Good evening and welcome to Edgemont High School's annual College Night program. We are so glad that you're here with us tonight. My name is Emily Coleman and I am one of the 10th through 12th grade counselors here at Edgemont. And I am joined tonight by my colleagues Jamie Brookman, Kevin Fleck, and Stephanie Fuentes, along with our principal Kyle Hosier and our assistant principal Mary Rose Joseph. Tonight, we are thrilled to have four amazing panelists from a wide range of colleges joining us. They have each prepared a short presentation on the college admissions topic of importance. And just so everybody knows, this program is being recorded and will be available on our website after the event. If at any point during the presentation you have questions, we encourage you to complete the Google form that's located on the homepage for this event. The counselors will be moderating the questions as they come in, and our goal is to answer as many questions as time permits following the admissions representative presentation. So just in case you need help finding the link, it is the red circle where you can access the form. And again, it's the same website that you access this presentation. So let's dive in on tonight's topic. We will be learning about researching colleges and finding the right fit, a holistic approach to the admissions review process, how students can distinguish themselves within the applications, managing expectations through the journey, and then we're going to end with highlighting a few new trends and the new test optional movement. It's not really new, but it's bigger now. But before we meet the panelists, we wanted to give you a quick run through of how us school counselors help students and families through the next year and a half. So we'll start by gathering as a whole grade with the juniors in January to officially kick off our post-secondary process. Throughout the semester, school counselors will meet with students and their families for individual post-secondary planning meetings. And then in May, we're going to host a Paying for College evening program featuring a financial aid specialist. Before we leave for the summer, we conduct an essay writing workshop for students and then follow that by free access to summer support from the College Essay Guide. So it's definitely something to keep your eye out for. When we get back in senior year, we will bring all the students back together again for another assembly to lay out all of the logistics of the process. And then meet with students individually throughout the semester on different parts of the application, the essay, the supplements, anything that they need until they submit their application. Other things to note is in the fall, we also host college rep visits like the lovely ones who are joining us tonight, which gives students an opportunity to get to know schools more in depth and build relationships. The Edgemont counselors also meet with every representative to update them on the amazing things that are happening in Edgemont and answer any questions that they may have about anything Edgemont related. Additionally, your school counselor will write a college recommendation for every single one of their seniors who requires it. Our office also sends out secondary school reports that include these recommendations along with transcripts and the school profile. So think of us as like the hub of the process, and we're really available to help at every step along the way. Lastly, if you haven't already had the opportunity to review the short video that's posted on our event's website, we do recommend watching it. One of the suggestions we had was we're giving a lot of information today, but there's some basic information, 101 stuff, we want to make sure that all of our families know going into this process. So it is a brief review of the process from start to finish, and we find that could be a really great place to start if this is your first time going through it. So let's meet our fabulous panelists. So as I mentioned before, we are very thankful to have four amazing college admissions professionals with us tonight, each who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. So I'm going to give you their bios now because they're extremely impressive. So Miguel Alvarez, is currently serving as the Senior Associate Director of Admission and Tartan Scholar Recruitment and Enrollment Manager in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions at Carnegie Mellon University. In this role, he leads the Access and Diversity Initiatives team and works with the Tartan Scholars Program to recruit, enroll, and support students from limited resource backgrounds at Carnegie Mellon. He's a native of Washington, D.C., but has now resided in Pittsburgh for over a decade. He was a student athlete, earning his BA in political science at Point Park University in 2012, and after graduating, serving in the Army Reserve, and then beginning working at Carnegie Mellon in 2014. He later earned his master's in education in higher education administration from Northeastern in 2017. And his passion is for serving as an advocate for higher education, which stems from his own experience as a first-generation college student and the son of Salvadorian immigrants. Next, we have Mariah Bubel, who works at Binghamton University, the State University of New York. She's done that since 2004, where she has held the role of assistant director, senior assistant director, associate director, senior associate director, and most director of operations, and since 2017, director of recruitment. Mariah holds a BA in psychology and a master's in social science, both from Binghamton. We also have Laura Tapper with us tonight, who is the Associate Director of Admissions at Dartmouth College, where she has worked for the last 6 years. Prior to joining the Dartmouth office, she was an Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Tufts University, where she worked for 7 years. She's also an alumna for Teach for America and holds a bachelor's degree from the Washington University in St. Louis and a master's degree from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And last but not least, Sue Willard is our Senior Associate Director of Admissions at Hobart and William Smith Colleges and has worked with families and students in Westchester County, including us, for the last 10 years. She recruits students from around the country and as well as coordinates over 30 athletic teams as the athletic liaison. After graduating from Hobart and William Smith herself, she was a college soccer coach at both NCAA Division I and Division III levels before joining Hobart and William Smith Admissions in 2010. Whew, we did it. So we're going to start with Mariah, who will be discussing researching colleges and finding the right fit. So Mariah, it's all yours.
Okay, the pressure is on. I need to share my PowerPoint. This is the piece I'm most stressed about. So let me share my screen. Get my PowerPoint up. And there we go. Hopefully everyone can see that. So thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. My name is Mariah Bubel, and I am the Director of Recruitment at Binghamton University. I know that was a laundry list of past positions I've held at Binghamton, but I am hopeful that that gives you kind of an overview, that I'm coming with insight from different levels and different types of experiences in the college admissions process. I've been asked to kick things off tonight and give a little bit of an overview about the college search process and list creation. And as we go along, I'm going to sprinkle in a little bit of information about Binghamton, but I'll try to keep things very general to help with all college search processes and all of the types of questions that you may have as you get started with this process. The first thing I want to talk about is thinking about college search as an experience versus a process. So we're often going to use the word process, right? We're going to say college search process, application process, blah, blah, blah. But what we really want students to do is to engage in the experience of searching for college. This is a long quest, and it ultimately is a quest to find the right fit schools. As you go through this experience, you're going to change and develop as a student, and your parents are going to change and develop as parents of a college student throughout this as well. It's important to be engaged and present in throughout the entire experience and making sure that you are contributing as a student with what you are looking for and what you need in this process. So steps in the college process. There's so much more to this than just checking boxes to earn admissions. This isn't a game to get as many levels as you can, right? We don't want to just collect admissions decisions. We are looking to go farther reaching than that. We're ultimately looking to find the school you ultimately want to graduate from and the school that you believe is going to take you on to the rest of your life, that's going to help you to find that career that you want, or to help you to get into that graduate school that you want, or the professional program that you're looking for. It's also going to help you to find the place where you can continue to grow. As we said, you're going to grow in the search process, but you're going to grow in college as well. And you want to find a place that can help to nurture that and help you to develop as a human. So it's a big step. It's important that you learn to connect with your network as you're developing a list. So there is a big support network out there for students. You can talk to your school counselors. They're a huge wealth of knowledge and support. Talk to your parents, talk to your neighbors. Everyone is going to have an opinion of where you should go to college, and it's great to have those conversations and to help you to learn what's going to excite you about college. There are necessary steps that you're going to take, and ultimately you'll start to develop a list of places that are going to meet your needs. So let me go on to the next slide here. What informs your list? So you want to figure out what's going to be important to you in this process. So as a student sits down, there may be things that you know that you're looking for. You might know that you want to go to a college that has a particular major. You might know that you want to go to a college that is in a particular price range, in the Northeast, is a certain size, has a swim team, has a football team, has a great LGBTQ office, has strong Jewish life. It's important you thinking about what it is that you want out of that college beyond the schools that just meet your academic ranges. So as you're building, you can start by narrowing based on what schools academically you may fit. Your school counselors will be a wealth of knowledge on that. But then as you go deeper, you're going to want to figure out what else it is that you're looking for. And there's a lot of ways that you can start to figure that out. As I said, having those conversations with friends, families, neighbors is great, but just going out and stopping by colleges or universities and looking to see, hey, I'm on this campus and, maybe this isn't the school for me, but I really enjoy the environment here in the lecture hall. This is something I'm kind of looking for. I'm looking for maybe a larger campus. I'm looking for that active social life, or I enjoy going into the union and having many different options for meals. And those might be things that you want to add to your list that you're searching for in the search process. So then you want to go out and find out what colleges offer what it is that you're looking for. So you have the things that you want. And if you are interested in being an English major, there are going to be hundreds of schools that have English majors. You don't want to add all of those schools to your list. You want to dig a little bit deeper. Is there a certain type of coursework that you're looking for in the English program? You may want to start to search on different websites and dig a little deeper when you're on websites. If you go out to different college search engines, oftentimes we as colleges can pay to be the first school that you see at the top of that list. And may not be the right school for you. You might want to dig a little bit deeper to find that gem that's going to meet all of your specific needs. As you go out and take exams, if you're taking the SAT or ACT, you can sign up to be put on lists to get more information from colleges. I recommend get a free email address and use that email address for these processes, because we will bombard you with tons of emails and outreach and efforts to engage you with our college campuses. But use that opportunity to get to know the different colleges that seem to be ticking the right boxes for you. Do things like this. This is a phenomenal start. Coming to a panel and hearing from different colleges. Colleges will come out to your high school. You can go meet with them in the office at your high school. You can go out to college fairs to talk to a large variety of schools. And then if you're able to, go out to the actual college campuses, take a tour, talk to current students on the campus, sit in a class, take a mock class if those are offered, and really make sure that you start to feel if that is the right place for you. So, as I said, the research can take place virtually in person with your school counselor. There's so many opportunities to dig in and find which school is going to be the right fit. I think it's important as you talk about the list. We want to make sure that you're building a well-rounded list. And I put a bunch of different names here. I don't really think any of these are exactly what you want to call them, but I think they give you an idea of the range of schools that you should have on your list. So I have likely, possible, reach, target, safety, beat, meet, treat, foundation, probable, unpredictable, best chance, chance, worst chance. What all of those are saying is that you want a wide range of colleges to make sure that you're going to have some admission decisions in your pocket. So let's start with likely, possible, reach. So what we're looking for is academically, you're looking at the academic ranges for a college, and you're saying, you know, this place checks all of the boxes. I love this school. It's got everything I could ever want, but my average is a little bit lower than what their average GPA is. If you're submitting test scores or they require test scores, my test scores are a little bit below where their average scores are. That school is going to fall into a reach category. A school that you are right in the middle of their ranges, that's going to be a possible school. That should also be a school that you love everything about, a school that you could imagine yourself at, a school that you are passionate about. And then same goes for likely. You want schools on your likely list where you are probably above or on the high end of their averages, and also a school that you could be happy with. I think it's important for students to remember as you are building these lists, colleges and universities are also building their lists, and those lists change from year to year. Our class sizes change, our needs for students in particular majors change, our need for a tuba player in the orchestra changes this year from last year. You know, there's so many factors that have absolutely nothing to do with you as the student on the college side as we're trying to determine where we have spaces for students and how many students that we can take. So it's important to have a wide range of colleges on that list, because something that felt like a possible may not have needed as many students that year, and it may no longer be as likely of a school as you had hoped it would be. And I also think it's just important for students to remember that a college saying no is just as impersonal as you saying no. So when you're saying, you know, I don't love that college, it's not exactly the right fit for me. When a college is saying, you know what, that student's not exactly the right fit for us right now, this year, it's really not personal, and it's not saying anything about the value of you as a student or you as an applicant. It really truly is more dependent on what a college or university needs in that particular year. So having said all of that, I would just encourage you, make sure that you're enjoying the journey. This is not going to be a static thing. You're going to change that list probably 100 times throughout the next year, year and a half. You're going to visit different places and you're going to think, you know, this school checked all the boxes, and I walked on the campus and I didn't love it. This school, you know, didn't check all the boxes, but you know what, maybe that box wasn't as important as I thought, and you're going to adjust and tweak that list as you go. So enjoy it, and also know that while this is one of the biggest decisions most of you are probably going to make up until this point in your life, there are opportunities to work with many different people in this process that can help to make that less stressful and can support you through this journey and hopefully make it something really fun and ultimately valuable for you as a student. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariah. That was awesome. Miguel will now continue by talking about the holistic approach to admission review.
Great. Thanks, Emily. And thank you to Mariah. I think kicking off what is going to be a really important process for you all, but I think we started with the right piece, which is having that opportunity to be able to explore and figure out what colleges you may be interested in, and going right to the folks who are going to support you, right? Using that support that you have within the school counselors that are available to you. because they're going to help you really with that first step. As you're moving through that process, though, you're eventually going to get to the point where you're thinking about some of the application. And so I think it's important for us to start to think about what are some of the pieces that go into a holistic admission process. What are some of the pieces of the application? How do colleges look at those dimensions of the application, and be able to understand why some of these different pieces that are required are ultimately important? So the very first thing that you'll run into is going to be the application piece itself. So let's first actually understand holistic admission as a whole. Holistic admission is a word you'll hear a lot of throughout your time going through this process. Really, from my perspective, holistic admission is a beautiful thing that is available to students here within the United States. What it ultimately means is that you have an opportunity to be considered for admission at many universities around the country, and not solely be looked at as just simply a grade or a test score, or not solely be looked at for one factor within your application. Rather, be looked at as a complete person. Your application will be looked at together with other dimensions of not only who you are as an applicant, as an academic, student, but also who you are even as a person, as a community member. And I think that's going to be a really important piece of why we value holistic admission, is that when colleges are building community, we're of course looking for students who can succeed in the classroom, be good roommates and community members, and then ultimately go off to be wonderful alumni impacting their own communities or their own workplace and their own careers. So you'll see that those dimensions are going to be really important to the different pieces that we're considering through the application. The first thing that you're going to think about as we're considering moving through this holistic admission process is going to be the application itself. It's important to understand that different schools, different colleges and universities are going to have different applications. For many of us and for most institutions, you'll find that the common application is going to be the most prevalent application used. You'll find other colleges that have applications on their own website. You'll find other applications like the Coalition that exists out there. There will be some different options depending on the institution you're applying to. And that will be something you'll have to navigate the application fee or support through that process. From there, another important part of the holistic review process itself is really the academic side. So on the academic side, you really do have your transcript first is going to play a significant role. A lot of times when we talk about the transcript, I think the first thing that jumps out when I'm speaking with students is GPA. And of course, your GPA is an important part of consideration when you're navigating an admission or application process. However, it's not the only thing we consider. Because it's a holistic review process, whenever we're evaluating your transcript, we're analyzing your transcript in a very holistic way. We're trying to understand what was your GPA, of course, but we're also trying to understand what was the curriculum rigor that you took. So basically what that means is what did you do with the courses that you had available to you at your specific school? Did you challenge yourself within your environment? Did you challenge yourself in specific pockets or different topics or areas? Did you show growth? Did you show consistency in terms of your grade trends? All of those pieces are going to be important as we're trying to understand a student's transcript. It's not solely looking at one course, not solely looking at the GPA. It's really trying to understand the full landscape of what students had available to them. And we're never comparing a student to another. Really, it is looking, when we analyze a transcript, it is really trying to understand that individual student's picture and what did they do with the specific school that they had available to them. Curriculum rigor, I mentioned it will be a part of the transcript, so it is an important term to understand. And depending on what university you're applying to, different universities may have, within their competitive application pools, may have different expectations for rigor in certain topics. Or depending on what you're trying to study, you may find that they may have different expectations of what courses or requirements you're coming in with. So that's an important conversation to have with your counselor as you're thinking about what schools to potentially apply to. Another part of the holistic review process that I'll talk about are the activities. So activities are a really important dimension of the second side of what I talked about in the holistic review process, which is who you are as a person. And this helps us begin to understand that. And I know we'll go over essays and other pieces that may be out there as well. But when you think about your activities, they're going to be a really important space for you to be able to begin to show us what have you been committed to outside of the classroom. The best way for us to have an indicator of what type of community member you're going to be, how you've been involved within, how you may be involved within our community is by seeing what you've been involved with up until this point. What did you do with what was available to you in terms of having an impact or being involved and committed within your specific school? It's important to note that with activities, we're not just looking for one formulaic way of understanding activities. A lot of times students will say, I didn't get to be involved in many clubs, or I wasn't a part of a sport. There's no one answer to what type of activity we're looking for. For some students, it may be athletics. For some students, it may be a part-time job. For some students, it may be supporting a family member or a loved one at home. Whatever it is, we want to understand what you're committed to, and that's going to be an important part of understanding your application and who you are as a person. The next dimension that's important to understand about the holistic review process and the admission process is you're going to have recommendation letters. So you'll see different expectations on what recommendations letters you need to submit, depending on the school that you're applying to. But in many cases, for example, at a place like Carnegie Mellon, we require a counselor, school counselor recommendation, as well as a teacher recommendation. And, you'll have an opportunity really to be able to engage with those folks at your particular school and begin to have a conversation with them sooner rather than later about what some of your goals and aspirations are, and begin to lay the groundwork for the eventual requests of having to request recommendation letters. The final piece I want to talk about is testing. Testing is, we're in a pretty unique space now with testing. We are in a test optional space. When it comes to testing post-COVID, many universities have moved into a test optional space. Now, it does not mean every university moved in that direction. And some schools did simply during COVID, but now have moved back to requiring tests. You will really have to explore this on a case-by-case basis and work with your counselor to determine when a school is test optional. But if a school does list and mention that they are test optional, I do think it's important to note that they really do mean that they are test optional. That is really up to the student to determine whether or not they feel that their respective test scores truly do add or reinforce their academic record. If a student feels that they do, then they can go ahead and submit that test alongside their application to try to support that side. If they feel that they don't, then just know that that's not something you have to submit. And many colleges that are test optional are absolutely fine reviewing your application without tests, and you can get admitted to universities without that testing piece. Just it's an important thing to kind of consider as you're evaluating your application and having conversations with your school counselor.
Awesome. Thank you, Miguel. So next, Laura is going to help us understand the ways that students can distinguish themselves in this process.
Yes, thank you. So my assignment this evening was to talk about some of the different components of the application, how to best approach them so you can distinguish yourself. I'm going to focus on a few important elements that your wise counseling staff suggested, but I think we could probably talk about this all night. The first element is something called demonstrated interest, or essentially ways that you show a college that you're truly interested in them so that they will know that they should make you an offer of admission and you might actually enroll. You really mean it. You like them. Now, Dartmouth, where I work, does not account for demonstrated interest in our admissions process, but plenty of colleges do. So this is something to certainly keep in the back of your mind as you're applying. Demonstrating your interest is something that can happen in a lot of different ways, including from afar. You are probably getting a lot of college emails already. You'll get more as you follow Mariah's advice and sign up for mailing lists, and they all start coming in. Do open those emails from the schools you're interested in. Click on the links in those emails when you've read about something that grabs your attention. And then when that link takes you to the college's website, stay there, play around a little bit, and see what else sounds good. This is a good way, obviously, to learn more about whether a school might be a good fit for you, but it's also a way to show that you are paying attention to the outreach that this school is, in many cases, kind of customizing for you. Mariah also talked about travel. So admission officers, we travel every fall, in many cases in the spring as well. So look out for chances to interact with people from the schools that you're thinking about. This could be in the form of a college fair, which is pretty low stakes. You swing by the table, maybe you fill out an inquiry card and grab a brochure. It can happen in a smaller setting at a high school visit. I myself had a lovely chat with a group of Edgemont students when I was in town last month. These are great ways. Again, you're feeling out fit because you're going to hear nice anecdotes. You're going to get your questions answered, but also a really good way to show that you are getting serious about certain institutions. COVID also, I think, got a lot of us colleges thinking more creatively about how we do our outreach virtually. So even though, we're not in the thick of the pandemic anymore, we're still utilizing a lot of what we learned there. I know that, Dartmouth does a lot of interest specific like panels and webinars and open houses, all through Zoom. So these can be great ways to kind of keep your college research going, show that you're interested and you're still home and you're still wearing your sweatpants. So it's a pretty light lift. This is probably obvious, but visiting campus is, of course, another form of demonstrated interest. And for many, it's just the best way to get a sense of whether a school is going to be a comfortable home for you. So visit when you can. My advice there would be to be a good visitor. Hopefully that's common sense, but register in advance for tours and for information sessions. Proactively cancel with the school if your plans happen to change. We really appreciate those things. I'll just throw that out there. Another thing to consider is the round of admission that you choose for your application. So many colleges offer some form of early admission. That might be binding early decision programs, might be non-binding early action programs. But if a certain college is sitting at the very top of your list and you've done enough research to know, not just that you love it, but that it will also make probably good financial sense for your family if you were to attend that college, then applying early can be the very best way to broadcast that you are really, really serious about a school. So that's a pretty straightforward form of demonstrated interest because you're essentially saying, I pick you over all others, right? And then the last thing I'll mention, which segues into our next topic, is essays. So to be clear, there are great colleges out there that are not going to require students to send in essays. There are many others who only need to see what's often referred to as the personal essay. That's going to be a piece of writing, often 500 or 600 words, that you can use across many different colleges and forms of college applications. And then there are other colleges, Dartmouth is one of these, that will want to see your personal essay plus what are called supplements. And those are going to be shorter essays you are writing solely for specific colleges. So those supplements, that can be a great way to demonstrate your interest. We ask students to write a short essay on why they want to go to Dartmouth, and we're not alone. A lot of colleges ask something similar. We are a small liberal arts college in the woods of New England, so I see a lot of responses that talk about, skiing and close-knit communities, and that's great. Even more helpful, though, is when someone writes about specific courses or professors or research projects that they've learned about and would really be excited to engage with. Maybe they've learned about some cool traditions that are specific to an institution that they're really excited to participate in, things like that. Admission officers are trying to get a sense of how an applicant is going to fit into our community and enrich our community. So detailed answers are not only going to reveal that you've done your research and you're demonstrating your interest, they also help me do my job better, right? I don't have to work as hard to start to picture how you're going to fit in to our community if you are already painting that picture for me. So that's an important one. And then I'm going to take like a half step back and talk about essays more generally, because writing is a very big deal in the college admissions process sometimes. Your essays can be a very influential element in your application. And importantly, they are an element that's totally within your control as a senior. Many pieces of this get set in stone in advance. You can't go back and change your grades, can't go back and kind of undo the extracurricular activities you've been a part of. But the essays belong to you as a senior. And I think that that's a really powerful thing to think about. Students often ask me the question, sometimes it's worded differently, but its essence is, how do I write an essay that will help me stand out? I think I've probably heard that 1,000 times in my career already. And my advice, if you've wondered something like that, is to reframe the question in your mind a little bit. The goal is not necessarily to sound totally distinct, right? Your goal is to sound like yourself. I don't think it's fair to expect a teenager, particularly in writing, to sound unlike any of the other, tens of thousands of fellow teenagers who are also applying to a particular college in a year. That is a really tall order. What is more reasonable, and I think really at the heart of our goal in asking applicants to write essays, is that we're trying to learn a little bit about how you think and about what matters to you. And so that's where some of the advice you're going to get around essay writing comes from. Because, for example, some topics are going to be easier than others to achieve that. So if you've ever heard the sort of advice around like, oh, don't write about a big sports game, don't write about your grandparent, don't write about your service trip. Those things aren't necessarily bad topics, right? They're just topics that are, one, common to a lot of people, and thus it's harder to differentiate your narrative from that of many other people who had the same experiences. And two, they're the kind of topics that I think naturally can move a writer's focus away from themselves and onto someone or something else. Any topic can work well if it's important to you and if it gives you a conduit for writing about who you are and how you think. Just be sure to keep the focus on yourself. That is the critical piece. If you've been warned to, avoid elaborate language or flowery phrases, sure, that's not bad advice in general. And you don't want to change your writing style for a college essay. But if you're someone that's known for your fantastic vocabulary or your unique, way of writing, that's great. Embrace that. Your essay's got to sound like you. Similarly, if you've ever been told to avoid maybe divisive topics, don't talk about politics, don't write about religion. I would say that might be good advice if those aren't particularly meaningful areas of your lived experience. But if you are a deeply political person, if religion is something that has shaped your upbringing, then I think by all means, this is potentially a really appropriate way to choose to express yourself and how you identify. So that's a lot. One other word of advice for successfully approaching essays is that the details really matter. I'm going to steal an example from a colleague of mine. I heard her say this recently, and I was like, I love that. I'm going to take that. Think about someone who's writing about like their love of art, and maybe they're thinking, when I get to college, I might study art history. So you can have a broad approach to something like that, right? You can say, they can talk about they've always appreciated art. They love wandering through museums. Now they're excited to start studying art history in college. Or you can kind of go deep, right? And you can hone in on some details that would illustrate the same thing. You could say, I've always loved Hopper paintings. You could talk about minimalism, or you can talk about the emotions and how you can stare at an Edward Hopper painting and you can feel the loneliness. I'm just making this up. I'm not an art history expert, but that was her example. And then you can talk about how his approach to painting has changed how you think about something. Maybe you relate to other people differently because of that experience you've had with his art, or maybe how you tell stories has shifted as you've learned more about art. I think both of those, in theory, could be solid essays. I think both of those could maybe earn a decent grade in an English class, right? But the objective here is to sound like yourself. And I think the second approach does a lot more to set you, the writer, apart in the mind of the reader. And it does more for someone like me, the reader, in understanding who you are, how you think. Those details are what really allow your voice to be heard much more clearly. And that's the heart of really good essay writing. And then the last topic I wanted to talk about just briefly are interviews, because many of you will be embarking on those your senior year. So a college interview, like many other elements of the process, Miguel got into this a little bit, it can vary enormously from place to place. Some schools don't do them, others do. You can have one while you're on campus. Sometimes you have to be an applicant. You have to have completed your application to be eligible for an interview. And then they'll opt you in automatically, or they won't. You have to request one. They're not always guaranteed. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're with admission officers. Other times they're with seniors. Sometimes they're with alums who live in your area. So it can be really, it can really vary. There's also different types of interviews. Some schools do what are called evaluative college interviews, which means that a write-up of your conversation is going to be included with your application. Maybe it's going to have some personal input from the interviewer. Others are considered what are called informational, and maybe that's self-explanatory, but basically that conversation is just intended for you to learn more about the school, and vice versa. The school wants to learn a little bit more about you. So just bear in mind that there's a ton of variability here. My best advice around interviewing, two things. First, before you undertake any interviews, think about what elements of yourself you are most interested in sharing with your interviewer. What accomplishments are you the proudest of, right? What interests do you think most define you at this point in your educational journey? You are not going to be able to share everything that's great about you in the very limited confines of a college interview. So think ahead about what sides of yourself you most want to put on display so that you're ready to draw on those things when you get asked questions about yourself. When you do begin interviewing, a few things to think about ahead of time. First off, you got to know the institution in advance. Yes, you are there to learn more about the college. That is true. But it is basically a given that at some point you're going to be asked about your interest in the school. You want to show that you've done some research. So do some research. Be prepared to explain what is prompting you to apply to that particular place. On the flip side, in basically every interview I think I've ever been in my entire life, including every interview I've conducted or been interviewed for, someone always says, okay, so now what questions do you have for me, right? They always kind of flip things around, usually at the end. Don't be the interviewee who says, oh, nothing, I'm good. Come up in advance with a couple of questions that you can ask, regardless of who you're meeting. Maybe it's a current senior, maybe it's someone who graduated 40 years ago. Just be ready to sort of get a little bit of information that's relevant and interesting to you. Maybe what are some elements of this college that you love the most? How do you see the alumni community staying connected? What are some traits that you see among students who really seem to fit well here? Like there's a million things you can kind of pull up, but have some questions at your disposal. That will help. And then last but not least, I hope this goes without saying, in all elements of this process, be appropriate, use thoughtful language in an interview, but also elsewhere. Sometimes you'll be asked about sharing a struggle or a challenge. Don't be insulting. Don't be overly negative in your anecdotes. Dress reasonably for the setting. You do not need to wear a suit to a coffee shop to have an interview, but you should leave your sweatpants at home. And good manners go a very long way. It is not necessary, but a quick thank you note is so appreciated by interviewers. Especially because a lot of these people are going to be volunteers. It's such a nice gesture to thank them for their time and insight. It does not need to be elaborate, no stamps, no stationery, just a couple of sentences sent by email can leave a really positive impression. I've never seen an interviewer be upset someone didn't send them a thank you note. I've seen countless interviewers be so charmed and grateful when they did receive one. So that is my final tip. And that's it for me.
Great. Thank you, Laura. Before we get to Sue, just a quick reminder that we will be closing the question form shortly. So make sure to add your last minute questions now. So, all right, Sue, help us understand how to manage our expectations through this process, please.
I'll try to do my best here. All right. So, first thing is, I'm going to kind of piggyback on Laura and the parent versus students and expectations. I think the parents can play a great role in helping with, what is worn to some of these visits. Kind of jokingly, my tips that I always give students are, it's great to buy swag at various colleges and universities, but it's great not to wear that swag that you bought at this college at that college. So doing that is really important. But I think, managing expectations through the process in the student versus parent role, I'm just going to try to connect the dots between the information that you heard from three of my colleagues tonight, and just kind of maybe alleviate some of the stress. I think the parent role really is actively listening to your kids, okay? Listening to how they're feeling, listening to some of the things that are really stressing them out, listening to some of the pressures that they might have, been put on their shoulders for whatever reason. I think it's actively listening to some of the things that they're interested in. Okay, be curious. It's really important, as much as you love your children, it is their process, okay? And I know you want to be involved, and I know you want to help, and that's really important, but I think it's also really, really important to empower students to take the front foot on this, to take the lead. I jokingly say that I was that disgruntled teenager going through this process, and it's ironic that I'm doing what I'm doing now, because I was that teenager, dramatically slamming the bathroom door saying, I don't care where we visit, my junior year, and my mom picked the schools, and that is actually the opposite way of doing it. And for me, it was more, it's just stressing me out and I'm trying to avoid it. So I think actively listening, being curious, being empathetic. This college process, our college president always jokes around whenever he meets with families, and he says, I am sorry on behalf of higher education for what all of you are about to go through. And there's a lot of different stresses. And I think it's being empathetic, not just to your child, but being empathetic to other families and people going through this process, and have patience. Okay. Some students know right away, yes, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to do. These are the things I want to be involved in. But here's the thing. A lot of students have no idea, and they feel like they have to put themselves in a box because everybody else has this figured out. Why don't I have it figured out? And that's not a stress that you should be having. I think if that's the case, then that's how you kind of shape your college process. Cast a wide net. All right. Ask the questions. Don't avoid it. And, you know, college is really about the journey. It's embracing it. And parents, I think you're there to really encourage your children. Do the research on your own to see what it is. Ask colleagues and, you know, young alums from various schools that are working with you, or alums in different industries, what it is. I think it's really important to balance expectations in the sense of being denied to a college or university is not a mark against you as a person or as a student. You know, students are applying to more and more colleges, so there's going to be more and more students denied from any college or university. So I think it's, you know, managing expectations of do everything you can to put your best foot forward, but understand that you're going to hear no probably sometimes. And applying to more Ivy League schools doesn't mean you're going to get admitted to some of them. It's just you're applying to more. I think it's important to have a balanced list. I think parents encourage your children to have a balanced academic curriculum. I always cringe when someone say, well, do I need to take, you know, 5 AP courses to get into XYZ school? And my background, when I was coaching, I was at, you know, highly selective institutions, both tier 1 research and then highly selected mid-level liberal arts type schools. So I've been in a lot of different schools, and I can tell you right now, it's about understanding the student and making sure that you're challenging yourself appropriately. The biggest thing that is a no-go is taking on all these rigorous courses when you're not prepared for it, because that's going to hurt you in the sense of, you know, your child's not going to be sleeping, your child's going to be stressed out all the time, your child's not going to just be able to relax and be a teenager. And I think that's really important, you know, to understand. You know, create college-free zones. I think it's really important to just talk to them like they're a regular person and not talk about college all the time. I think it's really important because it just balances things. This is a marathon. It is not a sprint. So I think doing that is really important. Parents, you know, your really big role in this, since parents usually take more of the role in terms of funding a college education, is understanding how much your family can afford to pay for a college education. That's not something someone in my position can tell you. It's something that your family can figure it out. And it's also managing expectations of just because you think you can pay this much doesn't mean the financial paperwork that the schools ask for, whether it's the CSS profile or the FAFSA, that's what that says. So I think it's managing expectations on how much schools will potentially fund you, but also how much you can afford. And know that just because a school has an expensive price tag or cost of attendance doesn't mean that you're going to be paying that. So I think it's keep an open mind. And you never know what a school will be awarding in terms of merit aid, in terms of need-based aid. So, you know, put it out there, but also help your children understand, you know, here's how we're going to afford an education. Here's the role that you're going to be playing in that, those types of things. Helping facilitate college visits. It is perfectly all right for a parent or family member to call up or schedule online a visit to a college campus. That is perfectly all right. It is perfectly all right, like I said, to research schools. So I think the parent role is empower your son or daughter, but also support them, listen, really understand it is their journey. You know, we talked about essays. It is their essay. Another thing that broke my heart once is I was visiting a student in a school down this way, and I usually just ask it in November and October when I'm visiting schools of how are you doing? And he said, I have this essay that I wrote that I'm really proud of, but my parents won't let me submit it. So it's one of those things where it's that student's essay. It is their voice, and that's what we want to hear. We want students to be their true, authentic selves and be proud of what they're involved in. I think parents encourage your kids to explore and try new things, be involved. It is not vocational training. It is about developing those qualitative skills. And those qualitative skills are developed within the classroom and academic environment, but they're also developed by having a job, by being involved in clubs, by being passionate about something, whether it's, you know, social activism, whether it is political activism, whether it is working with underserved populations, whatever it may be. Encourage them to try, but also help them understand that it's okay not to know 100%. And most importantly, help purchase swag in the school's bookstores. I think that's one of the favorite things about college trips for many people. But students, I think it's really important, as I've said many times, for you to take, an active role in this process. Don't avoid it. This is not your parents' college experience. This is your college experience, and taking the time to really reflect on, what do I think I might want? And that might change over the course of your college visits, but what do I think I might want? What do I want college reps to know about me or understand about me? What's different about me? What's special? What am I excited about? Why have I done the things that I've done? And that's that thought process that you have to own, and understand. And I think it's also managing expectations in the sense of, this is not a competition with your classmates. Okay. I would encourage you to support one another. I'd encourage you just to hang out and not talk about college, just like in your families, but it's not a competition between you. I'm not reading applications from Edgemont saying, okay, well, we have this many applications and we're only missing one student, so it's going to be the Hunger Games approach. And that's not it at all. So put your best foot forward, support one another through this process. And like I said, it's all right not to know. I think that it's also very important for you to be on top of the Common Application and completing that, asking questions of how you complete that, writing your essays, paying obviously special attention to those supplementary essays, and how you communicate with us about, this is who I am, this is why I'm looking at your school. I think it's also very important for both parents and students to understand deadlines. Okay, don't miss a deadline. Understand also what materials are needed from that school. Do they require test scores? Do they require subject scores? Do they require which financial forms do they require? Are there special things that you need to submit for a scholarship? I think it's communicating with the college office or college counselors and the office of, like, okay, this is what I'm applying, this is what I need, and communicating and not doing that at the last minute. Okay. It's also, students, you need to communicate with the people that are writing the letters of recommendation for you and letting them know, these are the deadlines. This is what I'm trying to get across to colleges and universities about me. Is there any way that you could possibly include something about this in your letters of recommendation? Okay. Just as I said with the parent role, but students, I think you need to make sure that you enroll in a balanced curriculum academically. We don't want perfect people. We want humans that are authentic and are going to have balance. And like I said, embracing the journey, but we don't want you to fit into some caricature that you think we want. We want you to be genuine to who you are, but challenge yourself. But also have, balance. I think that you need to push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. Like I said, it's not vocational training. It is about discovering who you are. It's about diving into your interests, but also exploring other areas. It's about, as my coach said, there's no growth in the comfort zone, no comfort in the growth zone. So it was one of those things where, push yourself outside of it, because that's where some of the best surprises come from. And maybe that's trying courses that you haven't tried. Maybe that's joining groups that you haven't joined. So, don't be one dimensional in that. I think it's very important for the students to be the one that are taking the front foot with communicating with colleges. No stalking is a crime. But you can communicate with all of us. Our information's online. You have venues where you can talk to current students, whomever it may be. My advice is also create an email account specific to your college information, because you're going to get an enormous amount of that from colleges. So you don't miss it. And it's okay for students if you say to a college or university, I'm not interested. Okay, that's perfectly all right. Please remove me from your mailing list. We can do that. So you can have that communication, answer emails appropriately, answer them timely. It's a two-way street, and we appreciate that. We are human. We are not rejection officers. We're admissions officers. But I think, managing expectations through this process, bottom line, like I said, have balance, have college-free zones. Take it, step by step. Know that there are going to be peaks and valleys in this process. Know that not everything is going to end up the way you want it to be. Know that maybe that dream school is not the school that you end up at, but that school you end up at might be your dream school. It's just having an open mind and knowing that there are twists and turns, and it's about weathering that, embracing it, and being your true authentic self, and supporting each other and having clear communication and trying to have a little fun through the process as well. So that's my my tips there for managing expectations.
Awesome. That was great. Thanks, Sue. Okay, we got through all four of you. So the next two questions are open-ended for all four of you. The first is, can you share with us some trends that you've seen forming in college admissions over the past couple of years? Who wants to go first? Sue,
I'll
go
go
for
first. Yes. I think one trend is I think finances are becoming a larger and larger question for families going through this process, whether it's families that have a greater ability to fund a college education or families where they're struggling a little bit. The FAFSA is changing this year, and there's a big unknown as to how that's going to affect families. So I think, a trend with families is there's a lot of thought on that. And as I said, a school might have an expensive price tag, but take the time to kind of dive in and see how they manage that. And, because colleges are becoming more and more expensive and affordability becoming a question, I think students are applying to more schools as well. So they're putting more applications out there.
I could go next. One thing that I think is a trend in high schools and in colleges is that this generation of students is more open to mental health support and seeking it out in a much more proactive way. And I think it's important for families to consider that throughout their process. What are the needs of my student, and how can a college or university serve or meet those needs? And is my student going to be able to seek those needs and opportunities out on their own on the college campus? How far away from home are we comfortable going? Things like that are becoming more and more important in the college search process. And then just to touch on the testing policies, I think we all went into this test optional world with, big hopeful smiles that this was going to be so great for students and it was going to be so much less stressful for students. And that is not what has happened. It is so complex and so confusing for families to navigate and for students to understand. The SUNY system is test optional for the foreseeable future. That doesn't mean that every SUNY school is handling it the same way. Binghamton is test optional across the board. When we say test optional, all of the SUNY schools mean test optional. And we're not trying to guess why you don't have a test score. We're not trying to seek that information out. We're just, you have one or you don't have one. It's either a piece of the application or it is not. And at Binghamton, we are test optional across the board. All majors, all scholarships, all opportunities are test optional. But with this test optional landscape, it's a whole nother direction of questions that you have to ask campuses and dig into. And once again, I'm going to highlight the knowledge of your school counselors. They really know these nuances and can help you to navigate that.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in briefly here just to build on some of that. I think that it used to be very clear that a student's decision to enroll at an institution was a function of market position and net price. And I think now students have access to a lot of different media tools and outlets and ways of getting information. And I think we're seeing that students are becoming savvier in terms of the information that they're gathering about institutions. And I'm hopeful to see that the trend continues in that direction more and more. Because I think that we are seeing, in some cases, not in all circles, but students are maybe veering off just the traditional pieces with so much information about institutions that are out there. And I was just going to mention very briefly too about testing. I'll just say that with testing, although, I will not tell a student whether or not they should submit a test. I'm always happy though to have a very transparent conversation about where our class maybe ended in terms of what some of the averages were. And I think school counselors are great resources and experts to be able to gather some of that intel and information for students. But I know many colleges are open in many cases to having some of those conversations to help students better understand where they fall.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Okay. So I think we talked about both of those. So we're going to move forward to the last question. And Laura, I'm going to ask you to start us off with one piece of advice you'd like to give our junior families as they dive into this college application journey.
Sure. Yes. So one piece of advice I will offer, I know it's early in the process, but I think what's really important to keep in mind is a long view of how all this ends up. And one thing that I think everyone on this panel would absolutely promise you and agree on is that it's going to end up working out just fine. Everybody is going to find an option that makes them happy. This doesn't mean that the college process isn't going to involve some disappointment. It does for a lot of people. That's kind of part of the game, and that's okay. You may not get into every school you apply to, and hopefully you go in knowing that that's a real possibility and you're prepared for the disappointment, and you can lean into that disappointment and feel it. But ultimately you're going to have choices and you're going to end up somewhere great. And I can prove it because one of my roles at Dartmouth, among the work I do with the first year classes, I also manage our transfer admission program. And so when disappointed students in the spring reach out to Dartmouth and say, I didn't get in, I'm going to enroll somewhere else, but I will be back. You will see me again. What are your tips on navigating the transfer process? They all get sent to me. And so I correspond with a lot of disappointed college seniors in kind of like the May, June timeframe. And I answer all their questions and I try to be as encouraging as possible. And do you know what happens? Every single time, every single one of those wonderful students, I never hear from them again, because by the time the transfer application opens in December, they are happily ensconced in a wonderful college community somewhere on this planet. They've made friends, they found a home, and they've forgotten all about me and all about Dartmouth, and it's great. And so, take that as just an anecdote that really does kind of, I think, exemplify what we try to tell families, which is it's all going to be okay. We promise.
Any other words of wisdom?
I'll give one. It's actually I had one of my colleagues at a different program said this. He said, you might have a career or a job in mind or some sort of profession. Well, go and ask people in those careers and jobs and professions and see what they majored in college. And the whole point is there's lots of different paths to the same outcome. And it's just being open to those paths and being open to trying new things and developing the skills. So there's no one perfect way to that outcome. It's about, embracing the twists and turns and putting yourself out there.
I'll add one too, just because I'm in this phase, and I think it starts earlier than I ever expected. But my oldest daughter is in 6th grade, and we just got the first report cards, and I'm scrolling through Facebook, and I am shocked at the number of parents that are posting their report cards and comparing their children, and little Susie's an honor roll and little Johnny's the smartest kid on earth. And I started thinking, oh my gosh, like, should I be comparing my daughter? I had to hold myself back and say, no, she is great. She is her, she is doing her thing, and we will work on any issues that she has, but she's her own person. I don't need to compare her to these other students. And I follow a lot of these Facebook groups and College Confidential and these Reddit threads. And people are not kind out there in the internet all of the time. They are not honest out there in the internet all of the time. So just remember, you know your student, you know who they are, you know their strengths, and you know their weaknesses as well. So don't bother comparing them to all of these other students and worrying about what student A, B, or C is doing, because you're just going to focus on you and your student in this process. And as everyone else has said, it's going to work out and it's going to be great.
Miguel, you have anything to add, or we're good?
I think we're good. I don't know how to follow those up, so that's going to
You're
be
really good, right?
Yeah, they were.
Awesome. Okay. So we want to thank all of our presenters tonight who shared a lot of really, really good, important information with us. And I think there were a bunch of questions that came in during the presentation. They made our way to our Google form. So thank you to all of our participants for that. We're going to take the next few minutes to share some of those questions with our panelists. Just to note, we aren't going to have enough time to answer all of the questions. So if your specific question doesn't get answered, please feel free to reach out to your child's counselor directly. And now, without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor over to Ms. Fuentes and Ms. Brookman, who have been monitoring the questions. So take it away.
Thank you so much, Ms. Coleman, and thank you to our panelists. I took my own notes so that when I speak at a further time, I can say, I stole this wonderful thing I heard. So thank you. And before we get started with the questions, I just wanted to remind students and families alike that we have a wonderful counseling website. On the EHS website, our department's counseling page has a lot of information about this process that we are experiencing. Oh no, this experience, sorry, not process, experience. Thank you. And also students who are paying attention, I know that there was some mention of emails, and I know also that not every one of you super loves regularly checking emails, but we, the older people, are really comfortable on email, and we need you to check your emails, and we need you to respond quickly. And I can tell you, as a former admissions person and someone working on this side now, the timeliness of your responses is important. So we also post everything we send on email, we send to the parents, and we also post on the Google Classroom page. That is the counselors for the class of 2025. I was like, who are we talking to? And so please check the Google Classroom, check your check the website, and check your email regularly, not just from your counselors, but from colleges and from Ms. Moore, the department chair. So because she will send to the whole grade. So very important. And I'm so glad to see from the questions that we got questions from students and families. So that's awesome to see. One of the first questions was about kind of deciding SAT, ACT, and I think in particular at this moment with the SAT turning digital, there's a lot of nervousness around how colleges may receive digital versus, you know, like I think there are some families who have felt like, oh, I must take it right away before it switches. Do the representatives have a sense of how you're going to take in this new digital testing realm and how students should navigate that or might consider navigating that? Anyone?
I think, yeah, go for
Go
it.
ahead.
I
Me?
was just
Oh,
gonna
okay.
I'll go quickly, and then you, Mariah.
You go. No, I'm sure you'll cover it. And we're
No. So I think, you know, regardless of whether it's a new SAT or old SAT, I think it is looking at, in general, what's the middle 50% of you know, the SAT or ACT range for a school. And regardless of your score, just figure out where you fall in that and what you want to do. I think the ACT and SAT test your knowledge differently and how they test it. So, you know, if you really want to know, try both exams. But at the same time, we also appreciate that there are a lot of students out there that are really intelligent and are going to go on and be very successful in college academically that maybe aren't strong test takers. So if that's the case, and that's you don't have to try to take the exam 18 times to try to get that score to the level that you need. I think it's looking at the colleges and universities out there that don't require testing. But I think all of us are just kind of navigating it. The new digital SAT has been available internationally for, I think, a year. So maybe it's us trying to figure out, are we going to super score the new SAT? Are we not? With the old SAT, I think it's just trying to figure that out. But Mariah, what were you going to say?
a lot of the same points. I think that we've been preparing to get these for quite a while. There were a lot of pilot runs at different schools across the country. So we've had some internationally as well as domestically. And then I think the advice about the SAT versus ACT, they are very different exams. So, you know, try them both or take a practice exam of each of them and see where your comfort level lies and see which one you'd prefer to try out.
And of course, students can always talk to their counselors about a testing plan that may make sense for them as an individual, because it's not the same for every student.
Everyone, thank you so much. We have another question. Can you tell us how you calculate or recalculate GPAs on students' transcripts?
Can we start with CMU? Miguel? Sorry,
Yeah.
you are not your university. Sorry, Miguel. Let me use your name.
Yeah, so for GPA, we our goal is to get GPAs really recalculated on a 4.0 scale. So as I mentioned, when we're analyzing a transcript, it's getting everybody on a 4.0 scale, but that doesn't mean that we're not looking at all the rigor or all the trends. We still see all of that, and all of that is still a part of the consideration. But we're really trying to understand students on a 4.0 scale when we evaluated a GPA.
Laura?
Yeah, we don't touch your GPA. We use whatever comes in from the high school. Schools that give both weighted and unweighted, we will use the weighted. But the only time we're calculating GPAs in any capacity is for schools who do not provide one at all, because we need something to work with. But generally speaking, whatever the scale is that the school is using, we're comfortable with that.
Sue?
We do the 4.0 scale as well. So we'll use whatever is reported, and we will use a weighted GPA because we want to acknowledge the advanced work that students have done. And as Miguel said, we're looking for trends. We understand during COVID, I think this is very important. We haven't said this yet. We understand that during COVID, there were a lot of bumpy transcripts and bumpy academic experiences. Maybe it didn't match with your learning style, whatever it may be. So we understand that, and we look for those trends. We know that, I think none of us here on the college side of the desk want to have somebody who peaked in 9th grade. We want to see those students that are continuing that trend. So I think whatever way we calculate GPAs and look at GPAs, we are looking at trends. We're looking at the coursework that you do. So I mean, in terms of testing versus transcript, it's, we're looking at valuing 3.5 years of work, potentially more than we value 3.5 hours of work. So GPA is just one part of that.
Just to also piggyback on that, another question just kind of aligned with that was around the GPA. If students from the same school have a pretty, students from the same school are applying, and GPA, is it always just going to be the one with the highest GPA that's going to get in? Sorry, I may have phrased the question to plant an answer, but I may not have. Mariah, we'll let you go first on this one.
Absolutely not. I mean, I think Miguel covered it very well during his speech, but we're not comparing two students at one particular high school and saying, yep, we're going to take this one and not that one. We're doing a holistic review of the application. We're trying to find the students that are going to be the best fit for our university. And as Sue just said, that GPA is not the only factor. There may be students with lower or higher GPAs admitted, but there's a lot of different pieces that are going into that admission decision.
Is there anyone else who feels really compelled to respond to that? I feel like where we get okay.
Okay, can you share more about how or what a student should do to access the school community? Like, is there a right time to visit a college? Is it okay to go during school breaks, the summer? Is it best to see the school in session with a vibrant community, functioning as a whole? Can you shed some light on when the optimal time to visit schools would be?
Honestly, when it comes to that, and considering the reality that students are looking at multiple schools, I would say I'd encourage families to do what works best for them and their timeline. It may be, though, that for some colleges, for maybe in conversations with counselors, there's a specific reason as to why you want to visit X school in the amidst the worst part of winter, for all I know, or you want to experience a particular open house event that school is doing. As you develop your school list, I think it will be important to kind of see what are the unique opportunities that I may want to consider. But at the end of the day, I think if you have the opportunity to visit at the best time that works for you, because ultimately, it may not be that you're going to visit all of these schools at the most opportune, perfect time that's available to you. So just something to consider, but you might have to do a little bit of digging to see if there are some unique opportunities that do work out for a student and family to potentially make a trip to a specific campus.
I'd like to add too, if you're going to apply to a binding early decision deadline, don't ever apply to a binding early decision deadline without visiting a school first. I think that's really important because it's not just about the name of the school, the ranking of the school. It's also getting on that campus and really seeing how do you see yourself fitting in with these people on a community level, on an academic level. So I think that's really important. Also, I think it's really important, Miguel, you're right, like do it on your schedule, but also manage your expectations. I always crack up when families visit our campus on a Saturday morning and they're touring campus at 11 o'clock in the morning and they're like, it's a bit quiet. And I'm like, it's 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning. It's going to be a little quiet. So I think it's managing those expectations. If you want to see the rah campus spirit, go when school is in session. So I think it's managing what you want to take from that visit and trying to plan a visit when you're going to be able to hopefully embrace those aspects or explore those aspects when you're there.
I'll add one quick thing. I think Sue's point that you absolutely do not walk into a binding situation with a school you haven't visited is so important. And then there's kind of a reverse that's also true, which is that a lot of schools, you're going to apply regular decision and you don't have to squeeze all your visits in before you get to those places because you have a lot of time to continue learning about them as the application process kind of winds itself up. And in many cases, once you know where you've been admitted, that can give you a really different way to think about visits because you might want to visit all the places that are now an option for you and see them in a different light. Schools really tend to roll out the red carpet, usually in April, for their admitted students, and you will feel like a real VIP walking around a campus where you've got an offer of acceptance in hand, and now you've got all the power and you're trying to make the best decision possible. I mean, they really will make sure you get to experience so many elements of campus life. So don't sweat too much if you can't make it to all the places on your list before the application process ends in a deadline, because that's not the end of the road. There's time.
I wanted to say one thing, and then we have like 2 more questions that I think is extremely important for both the students and families to hear, is that as you're kind of navigating this process, be kind and be mindful of your language and words that you use around others in talking about grade school. I heard this school was blank, 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 blank. You never, ever, ever know who is around and whose family member, loved one recently is very proud to have graduated from a school that you may be saying something less kind about. And be careful of taking what you see online, taking what one person said. The current students are really your best, some of the best people to talk to, people who are living the experience you hope to have, but just talking to one is like just talking to one Edgemont student on a good or a bad day. The first day of a quarter, you might get a very different answer than the last day of a quarter, as we know. And so be mindful of the way that you go through the process and how you speak about schools, because every school is a great school and serves some population well. So I just want to say, take care of one another in this way. And then we really only have time for 1 or 2 more questions. One of them was regarding teacher recommendations. A student asked about, is it only one? Like, who would it be? And I think that's actually a really good question because it's going to vary by school. So I will let the schools jump in on that.
As I'm on these panels, one of the jokes that all of the admissions counselors always make is that the answer to almost every question is, it depends. And this is definitely one of those questions. It depends. You're going to want to look at schools' websites, work with your school counselors. Every school is going to want something different, or from a specific person, a school counselor, or from a particular academic area, things like that. So make sure you're hitting those marks. Make sure you're trying to find somebody who knows you really well, who can maybe speak to you on a more personal level versus so-and-so is a nice person. They were in my class. Don't have anything else to say about them. It won't contribute greatly to your application. And then the other piece is, yes, you want to meet the mark of having the right number of letters of recommendation, but you don't want to go past the mark and have too many letters of recommendation, because then you're risking that the college or university is only going to look at the first one or two that they needed and move on. And those may not be the first one or two that you really wanted looked at or that really spoke to who you were as a student.
Everyone feel like that was covered pretty well? Okay, thank you. Thank you again so much. The last question actually is one probably for us. And I'm really grateful to the person who asked it, because I know they watched the video that Emily so painstakingly prepared prior to kind of this about the 101. And that was a question about, we are in the process of making a shift away from Naviance, and someone asked about kind of what that new platform was going to be, and can we say more about that, and when they were going to get more information. And we know that the platform is called SchoolLinks, and we are going to be rolling it out with our current junior class, and we're really excited about its functionality. But we are going to send information out about that, to starting with the briefly to the whole community, and then more specifically to the junior class as we kick off our in-person meeting. We're going to have a junior kickoff meeting, and we'll be sharing more with students and their families in detail at that time. But it has a lot more, it has all the functionality of Naviance and a lot more in terms of career planning and social, like we're excited to share it with the community, but we want to kind of give everyone the information at the same time. So that will be coming very shortly your way, and we're very excited about it. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Fuentes. Okay, we did it. Yay. Thank you so much to our panelists who took time out of their busy schedule to be with us tonight. And thank you guys for joining us. We're really excited. We had a lot of people participating tonight. As always, the Edgemont Counseling Department is here to help guide you and your family through this journey. We look forward to seeing all of you in your post-secondary planning meetings that are coming up in the new year. Information about that will be forthcoming. So you'll get information on SchoolLinks, you'll get information about how to sign up for your post-secondary planning meeting. All that stuff is coming soon. But for tonight, we wish you all a good night.